welcome to Scaling Up Not Giving Up. I'm your host, Richard Lee. In this first episode, I'm joined by Rich Williams, a former CMO turned founder, artist, and now CEO of a purpose-led group of businesses helping young people thrive. We cover a lot in this conversation: quitting a top job with a pregnant partner and a few art commissions, turning a lifestyle business into something far bigger, hiring mistakes that nearly broke the business, and how AI and ADHD are shaping how Rich leads today. Whether you're scaling a business, figuring out what to say yes to, or just trying to avoid total burnout, this one's for you. So let's get started. Today I'm joined by Rich Williams. Rich, could you give our listeners a bit of a potted history of your unconventional path that's led you to where you are today?
Wow. This might just be the end of the podcast episode by the time I'm done. I started life in sales. I worked in recruitment, a state agency. I was the sales director for a marketing agency. He sort of interestingly jumped over into the world of marketing, where I became the head of marketing and a marketing director, up to a CMO in a big global recruitment company. I've been an artist. I then started my own marketing consultancy, which evolved into an agency. Alongside that, I got into the world of the children's sector, so care homes, alternative provision, tech, and now we're growing a really purposeful mission-focused group of companies and a network within the children's sector to work with disadvantaged children.
Amazing. And you had a job as a CMO, you walked away from that. What was it that led to that breaking point that pushed you to do things yourself?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It was the best job. I mean, it was, and I took a lot from it, actually. I was a CMO. We were a 200 plus person company. We had 11 offices across US, Germany, UK, and I had a team in all of it. It was the first real time that I'd ever properly got to travel for business. So I found myself in Austin, in the tech hub, and Dallas and Denver and Munich, Berlin, and it was like a really, really exciting time. It was well paid and their culture was brilliant. It was unlimited holiday, flexi working. You could work when and where you wanted. So they just ticked absolutely every single box. So you're probably wondering why the hell I left. We got into COVID and I found myself working from home every day. And a couple of things happened. One is I taught myself to paint. So I was always had an interest in art, but I was watching YouTube videos of these artists and fascinated by it, and thought I'd give it a go. And actually it turned out I was all right. And suddenly, before I know it, I'm selling them all over the place through Instagram, and it went a little bit nuts. So that's...
Were you on furlough or had you left by then?
Well, I was never furloughed. We just worked straight through.
You just worked straight through. Cool. So you were doing this just in the spare time you had, you couldn't leave the house?
Yeah, so my working day, I'd start work about probably 7:30. I'd smash through what I needed to do. ADHD brain, I can get a whole day's work done in about 2 hours if I put my mind to it. And around 3:00, I'd sort of step out into the sun, have a beer, and start painting and messing around doing that. And that was literally my life for about 6, 7, 8 months. Anyway, I found myself in a meeting, and the meeting was with our chief people officer. I was finding myself constantly being almost forced into working on projects and initiatives that I knew wouldn't grow the company. They would grow her department. And there was a bit of a conflict there. And I was in a meeting and I'd left the meeting being ordered to do something that I didn't agree with. And classic me, I walked into the kitchen. My wife's 7 months pregnant. And I said to her, I'm leaving. And she looked at me and went, me or your job? And I went, obviously my job. And she said, oh God. And I said, well, here's my theory. I've got a commission list of about 10 paintings. That's my basic salary. I've always wanted to work for myself, and I think I've proven that I can walk into a recruitment company and in 6 months I can totally turn them around at cost without much spend, do it all in-house and leave them much better than I found them. And I think that's my business model. There will be tons of recruitment companies out there that want a CMO but can't afford one. So I'll offer them a 6 month sort of transformation at half the price they'd spend on a CMO, and that's the life for me. And she just said, okay, well, fine, I'll back you. Let's do it.
Amazing. I hear so many people that give up their jobs and go self-employed or start a business right when they're about to have a child, especially men. It just something seems to happen. Obviously, women tend not to do it because they're going to go on to maternity.
Yeah.
Men just seem to go, oh my God, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely, I mean, I don't know if, are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
Absolutely shit my pants. So I think we'll probably get onto this a little bit later on, but it was the probably most scary decision of my life, because I was on a really good salary. She was too, but she was about to give that up for a while. And there's just in terms of the there's only been a couple of moments in my life that probably would have been a worse time to do it. But for whatever reason, I decided I was doing it. I saw the safety in the fact that I had a bit of money coming in through part, and that was enough just to get going. And the way I saw it is, if I can't go out there and find 2 clients within the first couple of months, I don't deserve to be doing it anyway. So I just sort of backed myself to do it. Yeah. And the rest was history.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's often the case, isn't it? You often just think, you're almost starting a lifestyle business at that point. However, I know from our chats earlier, it didn't really continue just as a lifestyle business for you. So what happened next?
No. So as I said, I use this term a lot. That was the life for me. So I saw myself doing 2 paintings a month and having 2 clients. And if I could divide my time between those 2 things, I'd be absolutely laughing. And so what actually happened was, I think within something like 4 months, I had 8 clients. And I think within about 7 or 8 months, I had 12 clients, and way too much for one person to deal with. But that's the story of my life. And I very, very quickly had to hire someone, which I didn't want to do. So I actually found that almost as scary as starting the business. I didn't want the responsibility of hiring someone. I wanted to be able to depend on myself for a while. I knew that I could win it, deliver it, and keep clients happy. The thought of having to then pay people and the pressure that came with that, I didn't really want it. But here we are, and I've got tons of clients, and they're all brilliant clients. And, seems like a really, really good business for me. So I just went with it and hired someone who I then went on to bring with me pretty much everywhere I've been since, Jack. And yeah, Mr. Dependable. And yeah, we worked on it, and it started to grow quite quickly.
Isn't, your journey is very similar to mine. I also started my business as a lifestyle business. It's the whole adage, let's work less, earn more. Sounds fantastic, doesn't it? But I think when you're maybe a bit of an ambitious person or can see opportunity in things, suddenly it starts growing and you're like, oh god, I need people. The only way to scale this properly is people, and that's really scary. And I think what is amazing to hear though is that your first hire has worked out so well and is literally your right hand man, because I think that is so seldom the case.
We talk about ADHD. What I've learned about people who have ADHD is that they have this trait. They are brilliant with their gut around reading people. So, for example, for so many years in my life, I've said I'm just great at hiring people. I know within about 5 minutes of an interview whether they're going to work for me or not. And having met lots more ADHD people, it seems to be a bit of a thread that you just get people. You buy into them. You know what they're about. You can read them really well, and you just know whether they're going to be good. And as a result, it's often been a superpower of mine, building teams and hiring brilliant people. I've very rarely got it wrong, although I have got it wrong. I very rarely have. And so Jack is a prime example of that. Is he actually hadn't done the job that I wanted him to do, but I knew of him. He'd provided a service to me as a salesperson about 2 or 3 years previous, and really impressed me. And I hired him on his personality because I just knew that we'd work it out. And yeah, we did. And he's now, we'll come on to Unearthed and my agency, but he's now the managing director of the agency that I built. So he went from, supporting me to that over a 3-year period.
Do you tend to employ people that are similar to you or different to you? Or
Similar.
Similar. So
Yeah.
lots of other ADHDers in the organization?
Yeah. I would say so. Yeah. And you know what? Actually, clients as well. So I tend to build really deep, interesting relationships with clients who have it. And those clients are the ones that have stuck with me. And I can give you many examples. But, for example, in our agency, we brought on a guy that owned a recruitment company. And I just got on with him so well. And he became a client. We rebranded him. We did his site. We did little marketing bits. But he's a bit too small for us, really. And he stuck around for a bit longer than he probably should have done. And, fast forward 3 years now, and he's invited me onto the board of the new recruitment company that he's growing, and I'm now working alongside him. And I've got so many stories of how clients have stuck with me through thick and thin or in different ventures just because we've had that sort of bond, and they all share the same traits as me.
Yeah, we often get on well and build really good relationships with people that are similar to us. And when they're clients, that's fantastic because, you're bouncing off each other. It's like a really nice relationship, isn't it? But then equally, I'm sure you'll have had clients that are the opposite to that, where you're like, well, this is like an uphill
work. Yeah.
Everything is whacking my head against a wall here.
Yeah.
Hard.
And I'm
going backwards.
I'm very black and white like that. That's
same.
the ADHD trait. You either love people or you really don't want to know them. And I've always found that side of client service, client delivery really difficult, because you do have to work with people that you don't particularly get on with or like. But it's I think extra difficult for someone like me or you to do that, because we're really having to step outside the comfort zone. We want to like and be liked by everyone. We
Yeah.
want that environment, because
As soon as you're near, as soon as I'm used to deal with a client that I just can't get along with, or they're running really slow, they talk slow, they respond to you slow, I'm instantly just need to be as far away from this account as possible. They are stressing me out.
yeah,
And and everyone else is like, what, they're the slowest client ever. How can they be
yeah,
stressing you out? And I'm like, that's why they're stressing
that's
me out.
why.
I think we're quite similar. A lot of it. Going back to the agency then, your original plan was to leave clients with strategy, but then they wanted you to implement it. You ended up with a full agency. How did you make that pivot? And did you want to do it? Did you not want to do it?
It was quite a big decision, because my whole thing, that was the end of lifestyle business if I chose that direction. And so my sales pitch to them, if you can call it a sales pitch, was, I'll leave you better than I found you. And I think I didn't tie clients into contracts. I effectively said, I think I need 6 months with you. In month one, we're going to do this. And month two, we're going to do that. And at month six, you're going to be in a much better position. And ultimately, instead of having to go and hire in at a sort of a exec marketing, like leadership level, then you could probably just bring in a junior marketing manager to deliver all the hard work that we've done. And so it's a big sell for them, because they're not having to buy big. They're having to, they're doing things in the right way, and then they can spend a lot less money but get a lot more back at the end of that project. So the whole "I'll leave you better than I found you" sounded brilliant, but what actually happened was, I would get to that sort of roughly 6 month period, and they'd say, "No, we don't want to leave you. Can you just do the work? Can you just get the work done? Because we've enjoyed working with you, and for whatever reason you're safe, and can you keep going?" And so I had a decision to make. Do I find a brilliant marketing agency that I can effectively just palm this work off to and trust that they'll get the job done? Or do I pivot, and do I evolve this into a marketing agency? And because I built a marketing agency before in a previous life, and I knew how it worked, and let's face it, I can never say no to scaling something because it's just in me, I decided the marketing agency was the best option. But I did it in quite a clever way. So my model previously was that I had a bank of freelancers around me that were brilliant. And when I got to month two and I was rebranding a company, then I would use that freelancer to help me with the design work, and we both worked together really, really nicely. I got on with him like a house on fire. His name was Louis. And so I approached him and I said, "Look, you run a one-man band little freelance design agency. We've been working together on about 7 or 8 clients now. We clearly work well together. Any interest in you wanting to build this out, and we build an agency?" And he said, "Yeah, let's do it." And he had a really good name, Unearthed. Unearthed worked really nicely for me, because that's effectively what I really specialized in doing, going into a recruitment company or any company within the B2B space, finding out what makes them absolutely brilliant and what makes them unique, and working out that sort of value proposition, and then turning that into messaging and identity, and then content, and helping them to use it as a sort of a fuel to grow, really like defining that purpose. And so, yeah, we merged forces, and he brought a few clients and I brought a load more, and that's how Unearthed was born.
I love it. I absolutely love it. What do you think were the biggest challenges you faced when you were scaling? Because scaling is tough.
What were the biggest challenges? I mean, a few. So cash flow for one.
The killer of most businesses, isn't it?
I know everyone says this, and actually, cash flow has been an issue in every business I'm involved in, but particularly Unearthed in the early days, and latterly, so the business I'm in now, Story Group, because you're dealing with local authority, and they an absolute pain in the arse.
90-day payments at best.
At best, yeah, but you're talking big payments, and you need to pay your staff, and they don't care, and they've all gone on holiday and all of that stuff. So yeah, I definitely think cash flow, and I think cash flow in the early days of Unearthed, because I didn't understand it. I was so naive to business. Even when I was at Rawnet, the agency that I had the job in early days, I was the sales guy. I never dealt with when they paid and how they paid, and I was very naive to that. And so it was a little bit like that with Unearthed. You just expect people to pay on time, or you expect projects to go at the pace that they should do. I would say that for absolute sure. I've always had a thirst to learn. And when I say that, I mean from people who are better than me, right? So I'm not the one, I'm not going to open your 20 top top 20 business books and sit there by the pool reading them intently and making notes and do it. That's not how I learn. How I learn is by having better people around me, right? So we employed a non-exec, and he built and sold 2 agencies, and on paper, brilliant, and really nice guy, by the way. And he did add some value, but one bit of advice he gave us absolutely killed us. He said, you need to hire people who are completely different to you. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong advice, because I get it. He meant diversity in the team, different personalities, like different skill sets. It's often how you get the very best out of an agency, because if you've got some eclectic people within there, they bring something different, they give you that edge. Cool. Got it. So we then hired someone based on his advice, and there were 3 people at the table. One of them was absolutely perfect, in my opinion, but we went with his advice, hired someone, and yeah, she turned out to be the biggest thorn in our side for about 6 months, and we ended up having to pay her to leave. And yeah, there's a lot that went into that, but it was such a terrible mistake, because it impacted clients who would complain about her. It impacted the culture within our team, because people didn't understand why she was here, and there were such strange things happening behind the scenes. But it also impacted Louis and I, sanity, our bandwidth to be able to actually work on and in the business, because we were constantly worrying and having meetings and talking to solicitors and doing all of this stuff that was just so far removed from where we needed to be, just off of one decision. So yeah, I definitely think there was a big learning there.
Cause I can relate to this as well. I have to say, like, I do think there is room in businesses to have different ways of thinking, but you do have to be careful. I certainly required recruited a senior person in my business, and oh my goodness, like I remember the other leaders in the business on the management team, when we interviewed this person, were like, he's going to drive you absolutely insane. And I was like, I know, yeah, but I don't think that's a reason he shouldn't be here. Just because my personality is going to clash with him terribly, I don't think is the reason to not have this alternative viewpoint in the business. Actually, it was a total disaster. They literally did drive me insane. Do you know what I mean? And I couldn't trust them with absolutely anything, because their way of thinking was just completely different to mine. And great, they had loads of creative ideas and stuff, but couldn't get any work done. And I'm a get shit done person. That's great, but you're thinking about something for 10 years' time. Or think about today. This event is tomorrow, but I literally distinctly remember another leader saying to me, he's going to drive you insane. And I was like, that's not a reason to not hire this person. That is exactly a reason not to hire
Yeah.
this person. Yeah, it is a tricky one, isn't it, with hiring? So now you've took a massive shift. You're in the care sector now. Why? And I guess you're still in the marketing agency as well.
No, it actually, so around the time that I left my job and started my consultancy, I did a shout out on Instagram, and I was never that fulfilled by charging money for paintings, to be honest. It just never really, I wasn't doing it for money. And I actually found that the more money I charged and the more I sold, the more of a job it felt like. I started painting an awful lot of stuff that I didn't really want to paint. I was painting it because they were paying me to paint it. And suddenly, like, all of the creativity.
Deadlines were involved. The creative process vanishes, doesn't it?
You leave me to my own devices and I'm painting things like that behind me. But actually, what was actually happening was I was painting people's kids a lot of the time, and they wanted gold leaf paper dotted about it and everything grey. And just for a while, I thought it was a bit of a blessing to be even have the privilege to do it. But after your 50th, it becomes a bit more draining. And anyway, so I put a shout out on Instagram and I said, hey, I want to give a painting away. Who deserves one? Like, tell me and let's make it happen. And I got an inbox message from a guy called Brian, and he effectively said, I've got a kid that I've looked after now for the last 2 years. We've taken him from beating his mum up every day and pretty much near drug addiction at the age of 14. He's now 16. He's been accepted to college. He's back in with his mum. He plays basketball. He's completely turned his life around. And I think, he loves basketball. If you could do something like that, that would be brilliant. And so I did. I was quite inspired by the little story that he'd given me. And I did a picture of Kobe Bryant dunking a heart, because he had a big heart, and they'd told me a few things about him. And so he invited me down to his business, and his business was alternative provision. I've never really heard of that at the time. And alternative provision is effectively, they take the young people who are not getting on in school for whatever reason. It could be trauma, it could be neurodiversity like ADHD, a number of reasons, but whatever it is, they don't fit in. They're not getting on, and they need to do something with them. And effectively, they are sent to his alternative provision. He has a team of people who rehabilitate them, get them engaged, get them back on track and then push them back into school so that they can finish their school life. Brilliant concept. And I went to this place and there were these brilliant kids there. His staff were just, I don't know, just something happened. I just fell in love with the place. And also I had the worst school life because I was ADHD, because I was undiagnosed. It just wasn't the place for me. So I just massively relate to it. And I said to him, I'm so jealous. I've just spent my entire life in the commercial sector. And whilst I'm good at it, and there's parts of it that I do enjoy, it's not very fulfilling. And I come to a place like this and just, wow, like what a job you do. He said, "Do you know what? My biggest challenge is that I'm doing all this hard work in the day and then I'm dropping these kids to care homes that you wouldn't put your dog in. It's awful. The state of care homes in this country is disgusting. If I knew someone in property, I think I could do this on a much bigger scale." And I said, well, it just so happens, a good friend of mine is a huge name within property and he does brilliant things in and around the investment scene. And I think you should speak to him. A week later, we're sat at the local gym and I'm introducing them. And a week after that, we've started a business called Project Homes, which was effectively care homes in the local area for young people. We'd find an investor. The investor would buy the home under market rate, renovate it for us to the spec we need. And then we'd have an agreement with the local authority. They'd send us young people and we'd put on the care. So that was the model. And yeah, we got our first home. And that's really how it started. It's really, really fortunate, and I'm so lucky it did. And then effectively what happened was Brian's business partners at the alternative provision said, "Hey, why are you doing this separately to us? You should have done it with us. We've got a proposal for you. How about we all merge forces and we'll wrap our two alternative provisions in. You wrap your home in." And we'll build them together, have a much bigger impact in the local area. And that's effectively how Story Group was born.
Absolutely amazing. I think you've got 6 homes now. Talk to me about scaling in that complex and very, very, very highly regulated environment, dealing with, like you said, local authorities.
Oh, man, Story's a little bit more detailed than that because it wasn't just two businesses coming together. So the way that they'd set their alternative provision up was mad. They had lots of mini businesses where they had shared ownership with people. So, alternative provision can be a number of things. It isn't just you visit us and we'll work with you. It could be you have a trades area, you have a creative area, you have a hair and beauty, and what you try and find whatever engages the young person and you work with them on that. And you try and give them things like NVQs so they at least leave with some sort of qualification. But your ultimate goal is to engage them, get them enjoying learning, and then back into school so they can finish. So they had lots of little businesses. There was probably 4 or 5 plus the main alternative provision. And then we threw homes in, and it took me about 2 weeks as the brand guy who's done this time and time again to say, guys, this is nuts. You've got local authority figures coming to one of our homes and saying, so what business is this? Are you Story Group or are you Homes or what is it? They were confused. And if they're confused, we're not going to scale this thing. So my job with them was to sort of condense everything down into one brand story. So that's why we started Story Group, because it was, hey, look, we need to bring this together. And Story Group is ultimately Story Homes, which is care homes, Story AP, which is alternative provision, and Story Training, which is apprenticeships. And the theory is we can either get them back into school, home them, or put them on a pathway into the working world and give them a chance and an opportunity. So yeah, it was very difficult. 7 directors for a start, trying to run effectively one group of businesses. So you can imagine how that went. You've then got 3 completely different businesses that are all within a similar sector but do totally different things under the same name. So, you're trebling your workload for marketing and sales and trying to work out how we coherently tell that story to the right people. You're then dealing with local authority, who are a total nightmare. And I hope I'm not going to regret saying this and someone sees this, but they know they are for a variety of ways.
I'll be honest, I think most people that work in local authorities often think that is a total nightmare. They're just stuck in the system.
They do. But I could give you horror stories for days. You're working with local authorities who don't pay. Ofsted, I've never in my life, to this day, people laugh at me because I come from the private sector. And so I'm only 3 and a bit years into this sector. And to this day, I cannot understand how we allow Ofsted to do what they do. Just the way that they operate, the negative black cloud that they carry around with them. What's crazy for us is that we've got it across, 6 care homes. 2 of them are children's homes, which are even more highly regulated. The other 4 are supported accommodation, which is your 16 plus. So we've got it across all of the homes individually, and we've got it across the school that we're working on at the moment.
So we've talked a little bit about local authorities managing financial strain. How do you manage the staff recruitment in that group? Because I imagine it must be pretty difficult. They've got pretty hard jobs, some of these staff.
Very difficult. It's probably the number one problem, and has probably been the number one blocker to us scaling. So particularly our care homes. So there's things like every care home needs a registered manager, and a registered manager, you cannot operate without one. They are the manager of that home. The license that you get for trading within that home is tied to their name, not the company. So for example, we're just about to open a children's home, and our registered manager decided that the job was too tough for her, and I don't blame her because it's a bloody tough job. And she decided she was going to stop, leave, not do what she was doing anymore. And immediately we had to withdraw our application to trade, which means that it puts you back however many months. You then need to go and find registered managers. There's a massive shortage of them. There just aren't enough for the demand. And that's at the top end. Then you've got the bottom end where you're right, it's a very difficult job. And how we've had to overcome it is we've almost rebranded the role. So we've gone from sort of care workers to behavior mentors. We've added more to the job. We've made the job more challenging, but also more rewarding. And as a result, that gave us a really nice uplift. We've also had to go fishing in other ponds. So we've had to think about things like working with teaching assistants who are almost always unfulfilled in the job. They're not very well paid. They are often thrown the most difficult child on a one-to-one basis in a class, but they aren't informed enough to be able to deal with them, and they're not trained and developed to the standard that need to be. So we sort of almost, go fishing for them and say, hey, come and have a more rewarding job. We'll give you an awful lot more in terms of training and development, and, you'll be doing an even better job. And so we've had to really, really think outside the box. One young person might be a one-to-one, one might be 3-to-1, and you're juggling that and recruitment and referrals. And so, that's definitely been a real challenge for us, for sure.
I believe you do unlimited holidays, flexible working. So was that culturally the right thing to do, or was that more done for a recruitment point of view? And how do you find that those things work and attract staff and
Well, we don't at Story, but I have pushed for it. But Story Group is education in general is 20 years behind. I come from a world where you hire really good people and you just trust them to do the job. If they need more time off, they can have it. If they need to come in late, and I just find you build that trust. But I think I'm trying to push that agenda, and I've introduced some more forward-thinking ways at Story Group, but there is a process, and it doesn't work for everyone, particularly when you've got shift work and people on different contracts doing different jobs. It's really difficult to have a uniformed, hey, this is what you get. However, in other businesses that I'm involved in, so for example, in Unearth, that was completely unlimited holiday. That was the most relaxed culture going. And as a result, I feel you hire loyal people who work even harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's the biggest lesson you think you've learned when you've been scaling businesses?
What's the biggest lesson? I think, well, one for sure is I always say growth without clarity is absolute chaos. So I've been in several businesses where we've just got going, and I don't mind that. You mentioned it earlier on, you like to get shit done, right? And so do I. And that's our mindset. And I will always just jump in and we'll work it out. However, if you don't have a really refined vision for where you want to be and you haven't thought about that roadmap, then I've often found that things tend to unravel quite quickly, particularly when you're in quite an entrepreneurial business and you've got multiple entrepreneurial people. Because at Story Group, effectively, you've got 7 directors, but they're all entrepreneurs, so they'll go off in different directions if you don't have that North Star to bring people together. So I think that's one. And I think the other thing, and a mistake that I have often made and try really hard not to, is that you can't do it all. So I've had to learn to empower others and get comfortable with letting people do the work that I know I could do either quicker or better. But it doesn't help me. If I do everything, then ultimately we're never going to scale this thing. And I think it took me a long time to realize that. It really did. But just trusting people to just go do the work that you would normally do, I think it frees you up, and it's again such a superpower.
It's kind of the same with decision making, isn't it? Often decision making goes up right to the top, and that's the barrier to scaling as well.
Exactly.
And I also find, to your point around empowering, sometimes it's actually quite difficult because lots of people are kind of mentally conditioned in lots of jobs not to be empowered and not to make decisions. So actually, when they move into a business where suddenly they can be empowered, you feel as the leader that you have given them autonomy, they often just don't do it.
We had a lovely turning point in story where our operations managers, who effectively, we've got one for each of the three areas of the business, they basically burst down the door and said, can we just do this? Can you just leave this to us? And it was very refreshing, because a lot of the time you feel like you want to take things off of their plate. You want to make the decisions. You want to make their job as easy as possible. But actually, sometimes making their job easy is not getting involved. It's letting them do it. And when that happened, we really noticed a big difference in the culture of our business. So we found ourselves getting in the way of things, which was really interesting.
Yeah, really key point there. You mentioned to me when we had a pre-chat that if something scares you, it's probably a sign you should do it. Can you give us some examples of some decisions that have been terrifying, but were the right ones?
My learning in life is that when my gut is worried, when I'm sitting there thinking, oh God, should I do this? It's always massively worked out for me. And so, multiple times. So when I left the marketing agency, I'd been a sales director there for 6-7 years, and I'd seen this job spec, which was a head of marketing at a recruitment company. So I messaged them and I said, I know what you need. It's all of this. Are you interested in chatting? And that I had the job the next day. Before starting, I remember being absolutely scared to death. I'm walking into a company. I've never been at this level before, let alone never worked in marketing. What if they find me out? And I realized within about 2 days, Jesus, I know an awful lot more than anyone else in this room. I'm going to be okay. That's one. I think leaving a stable, well-paid job to bet on myself didn't make financial sense. Worst timing ever. But it gave me real control and allowed me to enjoy the freedom of life and what I wanted to do. So that was another one. I think recently we acquired a failing alternative provision down in Bournemouth. It made no sense to pick this up. We had a business that was absolutely flying, but we found out about this AP down in Bournemouth, and it looked good, but she'd run into the ground, and the local authority had stopped sending kids, and they'd been downgraded, and we were offered the opportunity to just take it on. I remember thinking, Jesus, this is such high risk. It's going to take 7-8 months minimum to turn this round. Well, we're now at month 8, and it's absolutely flying. But I remember thinking, I don't think we should do this, but hey ho, we did it anyway. And I think there are some smaller ones, like there have been multiple times where I've said no to work that didn't align with my purpose. And it's funny, we had a chat earlier on about the fact that we often struggle to do business with people we don't get on. I would absolutely infuriate my business partner, Louis, because we'd go for a project and we'd be at the point where I thought we were about to win it. And I'd say, no. And he'd go, no. I'd say, I'm telling you, I know this client's going to be a nightmare. I know this is going to be a challenging project, and I think it'll kill us. And I know we need the cash, but I promise you, one of the best lessons I've learned in life is it's the ones that you often walk away from that are the best deals. So yeah, tons of times, but it's whenever I get that gut, I just push through it, and it's become a lot easier now.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think that thing when you're scaling and you're trying to get business off the ground and you're offered cash on a contract, but you know it's going to be a nightmare, or you have an inkling it's going to be a nightmare, it is so hard to turn that down. But I think what you've got to remember sometimes is the carnage it can cause to your staff and your organization is more costly than the amount of money you're going to lose by turning it down. And I'm sure we've both seen that firsthand.
9 times out of 10, it leaves a door open that you walk straight through elsewhere. It happens so often. You don't take it and you're like, geez, probably should have taken that. And then bang, the inbox goes and you've got yourself a brief and away you go and you're picking up the next best project. So yeah, I'm really good at that. But I learned from some brilliant people who taught me, and I've just carried it through. I'm not afraid to say no anymore.
Amazing. And that's such a strength to have. Should we just talk about a little bit about your past then? You know, you've been quite open. It's been quite difficult in parts, especially as a young person with undiagnosed ADHD. Like, how do you think that's influenced you getting into business and your business decisions?
Well, I don't know what the stat is, but there's a very interesting statistic around the CEOs in the FTSE 250, and there's a very high percentage of them that are ADHD. It's we're everywhere, particularly in business, and it seems to me that, look at the traits of ADHD: very comfortable working at pace, need to have multiple plates spinning at any one time, never satisfied. Happy to work, and all of these traits really align nicely with actually running business. I actually do think at times you have to be a bit nuts to want to run a business. It's very high risk. There's a that it very often doesn't work out. You often nearly kill yourself doing it, and you need that type of brain. And so, yeah, I've always called it my superpower. I deep down always knew that I probably had something, but it was only last year that I actually got diagnosed. One of the downsides of ADHD is the lows that you get. And I've had loads of bouts of depression, and it's got quite tough at times. I ended up 2 Christmases ago. I was in a clinic, and I spent 3 weeks in there away from my family over Christmas. It's probably the most difficult period of my entire life, and I just burnt myself out. I wasn't managing life very well, and it came to a head where I had an incredible family around me who pushed me into this place, and it pretty much saved me. But I learned an awful lot. I was diagnosed. They then medicated me, and I made loads of changes along the way that ultimately mean that I'm such a stronger person now that I needed it. I don't regret it one bit.
It's such an inspirational story. How did being diagnosed change the way, I guess, you work, your business? I guess it'll have been a bit of a light bulb moment of actually this stuff that I've been doing has a bit of an explanation. How was that?
Yeah, so you probably have it. You beat yourself up quite a lot. So I have flaws. We all do, but with an ADHD person, their flaws tend to be really visible at times and really extreme. And so I would always just give myself a real hard time and give myself grief. And I also found like the people around me didn't quite understand. And so, being diagnosed started a couple of things. One, a journey with the friends and family and colleagues around me to better understand how I operate. And so I found that the people who cared really took the time to understand and therefore gave me a little leniency on some stuff and helped me with other things. And so therefore you're building this culture around you personally and professionally of people, and everyone gets stronger together. So I think that happened really, really nicely. I obviously became very self-aware of how I work. I started looking into, you know, how does someone with ADHD structure their day? Why do I always suffer so much with structure and planning and organization? And what can I do about it? And so I started to implement certain ways of working and bringing help around me. And it's just everything has led me to a point where I'm a much better, more effective leader and person because of it.
I'm assuming you're quite open with your team about it.
Yes.
How do you think that has not impacted, but maybe enhanced the way you work with them?
In the same way as I've just said, so that they understand how I work. So they're not booking in 90-minute meetings at 4 o'clock in the afternoon for me. They know that I'm dead by that point anyway. They know not to bother me past 3 o'clock because that's sort of when I tend to switch off. Equally, I'm super productive in the mornings. They're not bothering me between sort of 7 and 9:30 because that's when I get my best workout. But in the middle, we found ways to really work together and to book shorter, sharper meetings, prepare more for them, not involve me in absolutely everything unless it's really, really needed. And we have a joke about it that they take the mick. They know that I'm a total nightmare and they find it funny, and we play to it. And so yeah, it's just been positive across the board. There aren't really any negatives off the back of it.
Has it inspired other members of the team to reflect on any neurodivergency that they have?
Yeah, one has since been diagnosed. I think they've embraced it and they've definitely started to look at themselves and, start to think about how they best like to operate. And so we all know each other intimately enough now to know what works and what doesn't for everyone, which builds a brilliant culture.
Do you think that diagnosis plus your own struggles in earlier life has helped you get into this sector kind of subconsciously? Because a lot of the young people you'll be helping will be similar or have similar types of neurodivergency.
Yeah, well, it was only when I was in that clinic I was receiving therapy like on a daily basis, and we were sat there, and it's almost like the light bulb went off. For the first time in my life, I came out with the fact that I'd been abused as a kid, which I appreciate is really weighty for this podcast, but I'd never said it and got to the age of 39 at the time. What I realized was that my entire life, I have a pattern of helping young people, subconsciously though. So obviously there was a reason I was doing it, and that was the reason. But I'd never sat down and thought, right, how can I help the next young person? I just did it. I gave paintings away. I volunteered at a youth centre. I funded someone's business startup. Like I did all of these little things, pattern from the age of about 16, 17 right through. And it just dawned on me in that therapy session that day, my life's purpose is about helping young people. And something switched. And I literally overnight realized my purpose is how many disadvantaged young people can I have? And I sat down and I put 1 million by 2030. And that's the goal. And so effectively, I slowly started to remove anything in my life that didn't build towards that. So at the time, I was in Unearthed and Story Group, and I had a really honest chat with Louis, my co-founder, and I sort of said to him, I don't think I'm giving you what you need. I think you'd be a better business without me because I've got a foot in one and a foot in the other. And my life is about this direction. And I don't think Unearthed is going to fulfill that. So I effectively exited. Unearthed is going strong. And, I put all of my eggs into the children's sector basket.
Amazing, amazing. And how far are you along with that 1 million target?
So we only started in January, so we're not even tracking yet, although we're about to go on a bit of a mission to work out what we've done so far. But the issue I had at the beginning of this year was Story Group is a fantastic business. We probably work with about 250 kids a year and do phenomenal work, and we get brilliant stories all over the place. But my issue is it's not enough. And again, the ADHD in me, 250, but there are millions. And it's up and down the country. And I want to be bigger and I want to have more of an impact. So I started at Adversio Group. And the crazy thing about Adversio Group was we started a company that had a purpose, but didn't really have a business plan. So the purpose is we want to positively impact 1 million young disadvantaged lives by 2030. And the goal is to either start or work with purposeful founders within this space to help them do it. And ultimately, if we can level up the playing field, my thing in this sector is that there is a high proportion of people who run businesses and charities in the children's space who did it because they've got a big heart and a big purpose, don't necessarily have the commercial acumen to run or grow a business. And so my thing is, I do. So how about we work alongside them? I'm starting a network for purposeful founders where we're effectively just going to rise the tide so that the boat gets to where it needs to be. And so, providing advice on how to market your business. What is a brand? How do you grow it? Financial advice, all of the stuff that they might not have. Let's fill those gaps. And in reality, what that's going to do is they're going to offer a bigger, better service to more young people. And we're going to start to have a much bigger impact. So that's one of the initiatives under Adversio Group. As I said, we've already taken on alternative provision down in Bournemouth. We've started a marketing agency for the children's sector to try and help get stories out there and leverage what they're doing. And we've just literally acquired a tutoring business who have this really interesting technology. Our goal with this tutoring business is to continue doing the one-to-one online tutorings and offline tutoring. What we have is a broadcast model that's effectively going to make tutoring available en masse at very minimal cost. So it's ultimately making tutoring accessible to the entire country rather than looking at the sort of the one-to-one. And so we've literally acquired it last week and we're working on a big sort of turnaround project with the brand and the vision for it. But that's going to be huge. And as you can see, if you've got a marketing agency and you're working with the people who are impacting young people, you've got a network and you've got a tutoring company, plus the other stuff you're doing, you can see how we're going to start to raise that bar and get to 1 million.
Amazing, absolutely amazing, and can't wait to see what happens with that tutoring business. I see so much need now that the state just can't really fulfill, and there just isn't enough provision anywhere.
There isn't, and we that's number one problem. Number two problem is that matching is poor. So we now have AI, right? I was sat in a local authority the other day, and I sort of said, the way that you match is completely wrong. Let me show you how you do it. And we effectively put the CV for 10 tutors in. We then put the EHCP for a young person. That's an education healthcare plan. It details the type of care and the education that they need, special education that they need. And effectively, I said to ChatGPT, I anonymized it, GPT, here's the HCP, here's the 10 tutors, which is the best fit and why. And it came back, scored every single one and gave them one hands down. And here's a brief for how they should work with this young person. And here are their likes and wants and needs. It blew their mind. And I just thought to myself, why is no one doing this? Why are we so slow to do this? So yeah, we're looking at all of these ways that we can start to integrate tech, because ultimately what really matters is that the young person has the best care, has the best service tailored for them. And there is no excuse for it not to happen anymore. And that's what we're going to be doing through this tutoring company.
I absolutely agree with you. You know, obviously I'm from a tech background, and tech in the public sector is just barely touched, really. It's crazy. It's such an untapped potential.
We showed them this live. It blew her mind. And I said, how do we make this happen? You know, you've got tons of kids this could work with. Let's do it. And she said, I don't know about that. I just don't think we'd get the funding.
That's the bit that drives me insane. I don't know about that. There's a lot of
I've just shown you how to do
legislative red tape on this.
instant better care for a young person. It's taken seconds.
It's cost nothing.
It's nothing. You hire 3 people to do this manually. What do you mean you don't know about it? But that's what you're dealing with. And so it's gently, softly nudging things along and getting to where you need to be. But a lot of the time I'll just take it out of their hands and we do it our side, and they can benefit from it, because going through those channels is just soul destroying.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the one piece of advice you give to a business owner that's struggling with scaling, they're burnt out, they don't know where to go next? What would you advise them to do?
Well, my answers, I could have given about 2 or 3 answers, but we've just discussed one of them. I think if you are currently the founder of a business and you're looking at scaling and you have not adopted artificial intelligence into your business, you are insane.
Yeah, why have you not is the question.
Why have you not? I think I'm using it everywhere. It can be used all over the place. Even ChatGPT, even if you get a paid version of ChatGPT and you start to adopt it throughout your day and you train up various different conversations on certain things. You know, I've got one personally for my content that I've trained up over the course of about 2 years now, so that when I ask it for content, it doesn't sound like AI, it's me. It's just giving me a variation and help me to do things quicker. But, you know, we use it all over the place. And I think if you don't have an AI strategy within the business and you haven't empowered your employees to adopt a bit of an AI first attitude in terms of what they're doing and the tools that are out there and how you can do things quicker and how you can adopt it throughout your processes. That's probably the number one bit of advice I've got right now, because since I've been doing it, the pace of work in all of my businesses is tenfold. We are just getting through so much work and doing things so much quicker. And I think that's how you scale, because if you don't, your competitors will be doing it.
Absolutely. AI also helps with that piece around, we said before, getting the right people, getting the right culture fit is really hard. And I'm not saying AI replaces people, but it augments people to be more productive, which does ultimately mean you potentially need less people, which makes scaling easier.
I agree. And it's easy to drop tech, but it's not easy to drop people. I think that's one. I also think from my past experience, my personal experience, don't wait until you break to get help. So I did, and I've done that twice. I think you can scale your business and you can feel good doing it, but you have to get intentional about your time and about yourself. And it feels a bit of a cliche, that it's really important. Wellness is really important. You have to put yourself first, but so few founders do. And what they'll do is they will scale and scale, and they will grind and grind and grind until they can't do it anymore. And then the whole thing falls down. And actually, it's totally okay to say that you're struggling. We all do. And if you get the right help around you, then you'll stop a catastrophe and your business will keep flying.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. And can totally relate to that in the business I had. It'll literally just weigh you down and down and down and down and down and down to the point where it takes everything from you and you can't function to run it anymore.
That's been me.
Yeah, 100%. Just on the AI piece, I think it'd be really interesting to get your thoughts on what you think AI is going to do for the young people of today. The careers of the future potentially going to be very, very, very different.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's just look at marketing, right? So I'm absolutely insane because I've started a marketing agency at a time where I think marketing is going to be devoid of agencies before long, but I've got a plan with it. I see a lot of stuff on LinkedIn where AI is being bashed. And if you look at the job title of the person bashing it, it's normally freelance copywriter, content strategist, because unfortunately AI can now do it better than you. It can. I've seen it go from it can't to it can. And it's the recent updates where it's blown my bloody mind. Don't get me wrong. You have to have a certain level of expertise to use it and to train it and educate it and to prompt it in the right way. But it will do 10 times the work, 100 times quicker, and it will be of a quality where you might need to change the odd word at best. So what I think the young people of today are going to need to do is they're going to have to embrace this stuff. I think you're going to see more sort of solo entrepreneurs. So you're going to see more people, let's stay with the marketing theme, that don't build marketing agencies. What they effectively do is they learn the tools that do those jobs, and they become almost like a one-person marketing agency themselves. They'll be able to deliver things faster, uber cheaper, and build a really, really nice little business and service off the back of it that will ultimately save businesses lots and lots of money. So it's about adopting AI and adopting tech, understanding that these big clunky businesses of the past aren't going to be around, and sort of how do you fit into that ecosystem? How do you make sure that you carve out enough expertise to be able to grow something, and then really deeply understand the tools and the process needed to be able to deliver? I think that's what I'll be advising my boys to do. I'm just constantly feed. If I'm on a call like this, for example, I'll take the transcript and I'll post it in. It's got that now. It's heard everything that I've said. It's learned more about me, and so on and so on. I do it for every business. I asked it to do a sales strategy for following a couple of calls and a few things that have been handed over to me. Pushed it all in. Asked it to do a sales strategy, and I was looking at it, Jesus. I probably would have done about 70% of this, but there's 30% here. It's just so golden. Like, I don't even know if I'd have come up with those ideas, certainly not quickly. And that's where we're going. So anything that's strategic, anything that's written or copy related, we're in this crazy time now where again, like we said, you have to adopt it, and the kids of today have to know how to use it, because it's going to help them. I don't buy into this whole it's going to replace humans, it's going to take our jobs. It's going to change our jobs, it's going to change the landscape. And if you adopt it well and you understand how to use it, you will fly. Because I think
it's the same as a new industrial revolution. We're not all jobless now because we had the Industrial Revolution and steam came around and electricity. It just creates different jobs. It's just we just need to adapt to the different jobs. Because I think the one piece I'm concerned about, which I guess is useful for people building businesses, is to think about your future talent, because AI is fantastic, but you tend to need a senior person to be able to make sure that what's coming out of it is good and proof check that. And my concern is that if AI is replacing all of the foundational jobs, in 10 years' time, we won't have any senior people to check what's coming out of it is good, because you don't just become a senior person, you become a senior person by being a junior person. And if all of us in our businesses just suddenly go, well, we don't need junior people anymore because AI's doing it, we're just storing up a bit of a long-term problem there, that actually we're going to run out of senior people.
What's just final point on this is I was about to actually say that, we do a lot of care, right? So how does AI fit into care, you'd probably ask, because it probably sounds like one of those industries where it doesn't really touch it. You're at the coalface dealing with really difficult young people, but oh my God, does it? Because if you can imagine, if each of our behavior mentors had their own ChatGPT thread, right? And at the end of every session, they downloaded what happened, what young David had responded to well, incidents that had happened, things that we'd learned, things that they think need working on, and they keep sharing it into this thread. What then happens is 2 weeks' time, another one of our behavior mentors logs in, checks in with it. Where's he at? What does he need? What's the history with him? What should I look out for? Instant. Now, previously, they're doing that, writing down on A4 bits of paper and having to go through notes and folders.
And also, it should be like, actually, you've came across a case that's very similar to this 2 years ago. This was the techniques that worked then. Try using these.
Exactly that.
It's just so powerful.
Everywhere. It's being used now to the way that we use AI across the children's sector at the moment is, can we better match? Can we deliver better, more personalized care? And that's the impact that it's having there.
Which is fantastic. And that's a really good place to stop. Rich, this has been a fantastic conversation. If people want to reach out to you or get in touch with you, where should they head to?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Rich Adversio, all one word, and then LinkedIn. There are the two. And if people want to see my paintings, then it's Rich Williams Creations on Instagram. Got two. So yeah, feel free to follow me. And I'm on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to chat, they can connect to me there.
Amazing. Thanks so much. It's been an amazing conversation. Really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Oh man, it's been a great chat.
Thanks so much to Rich Williams for joining me and sharing so openly. There's so much to take away, from empowering others to embracing tech to just trusting your gut more often than you probably do. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe on your favourite platform, and do me a favour, send this to someone who's scaling something and needs a bit of encouragement. New episodes drop every 2 weeks, and in the meantime you can find past conversations and articles at richard-lee.co.uk or follow the podcast on your favourite podcast platform. Until next time, keep scaling up and never give up.